Why do you still play video games? Maybe you find you're spending more time gaming than you'd like to and you want to stop. Maybe you're confused. What keeps drawing me back into this? It's like an addiction. This is the second video in a series, though you can watch them in any order, so please do feel free to watch this one first. Exploring the needs that we might be meeting when we're gaming. By understanding these needs you're meeting when you game, you'll get more self-awareness and intentionality behind your gaming. You'll also recognise what needs need meeting in your life in general, and the extent to which they're meetable both in and outside of gaming. My hope is that in recognising that gaming is meeting your needs, you'll be able to be more self-compassionate towards yourself when you game. Be better able to explain your hobby to others, and even see it as a way of helping your mental well-being. To introduce myself, I'm Simon. I'm a person-centred counsellor based online or face-to-face in Oxford, and I also enjoy casually playing video games. I take interest in all aspects of my clients' lives, including the media they consume, such as games, and I really welcome gaming as a topic within therapy, to explore different aspects of ourselves. For me, I think the number one reason I tend to game at the moment is to escape or pause when life gets a bit stressful or hectic. I also use it possibly a little bit too much when I'm procrastinating from something that's a little bit intimidating and I want something where I can feel like I can have that sense of accomplishment. Optimizing and mastery are also really appealing aspects of gaming for me, but a lot of the points in this and the previous video do really resonate with me. So, Skyrim and Sega. In the background of this video, I am playing Skyrim, except I'm not using any of the crafting skills like alchemy, enchanting, or forging things, and I'm also not buying anything from any of the merchants. And this removes the overpowered weaponry you can make for my little Khajiit who's wandering around trying his hardest to find a Khajiit friend. It also makes it a little bit more adventurous and adds a challenge that I found particularly enjoyable. There's something I described earlier by saying he's a Khajiit and he's trying to meet Khajiit friends. There's also an element of role-playing onto that character. So this is what I'm playing in the background. I'll be looting every bandit, opening them up like a Kinder Egg, desperate for some good quality loot. Later on in the video, we will play some Sega Mega Drive. We'll play some Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, which is a game that's pretty similar to Tetris and a really good way of just letting your mind wander in the background. Here are some quotes about gaming and mental health that I didn't seem to fit anywhere into this video, but were pretty darn positive towards gaming and mental health, and I wanted to, I guess, just read them out before we jump into some of the specific needs you might be meeting in gaming. Hazel, in 2022, cites that excessive video games can be harmful, but moderate use can have emotional, psychological, and social benefits. There was a big meta-analysis of various different articles on gaming, and what it did is it showed that gaming didn't have any negative consequences in and of itself, but can actually be a healthy coping strategy. It can lead to a positive mood, it can help with relaxation, it can reduce stress and anxiety, it can improve emotional regulation, it can reduce depression, increase self-confidence, increase self-esteem, it can help socializing, it can teach frustration tolerance, and it can help with perseverance. Another study in 2021 by Cowell mentioned that regularly playing video games can help with our attention control, can help with cognitive flexibility and information processing. In fact, I've got a memory that's flashing before my eyes of going to a doctor as a kid because I was having some issues of hand-to-eye coordinations, and that doctor saying, maybe you should try video games. This is when Sega was out. Maybe you should try video games to help him to use his hands and his eyes better. So those are some pretty affirming quotes. Let's jump in and look at some more needs that are being met by gaming, so you can better understand why it is that you game. And the first of those is going to be social skills and loneliness. I mentioned online Call of Duty, Battle Arena or MOBA game in the last video. Hazel et al. In 2022 found that MOBA players had significantly lower psychological well-being, and what they did was they hypothesized that this was because of toxicity and harassment that can sometimes happen in certain games. So I want to give a warning that if you're using games as a relief for strong feelings like anger, that if you're harassing players or in turn being harassed yourself, it's actually likely to make you feel worse. And this also, I guess, highlights that some of the social interactions on video games will be superficial, competitive, harassing, and quite different to the more nourishing face-to-face interactions you might have. So we're going to U-turn after warning you about it and ask ourselves, how do video games firstly help fill a need for social interaction, and secondly, can they develop social skills? For social interaction, in my video on Oxford, I discuss a real rise of loneliness and the factors that affect that rise. I mean, to summarise it, we live in a world where we are increasingly interconnected, but social interactions changed now that we meet less often in person, maybe still an impact of the pandemic. Furthermore, socialising has grown more expensive, especially in the UK, and we increasingly live in communities where there's less of a sense of community. Let's say, for example, we experience a disability. There can be even more obstacles getting in the way of socialising with others or feeling connected, part of community. Well, video games have an answer to this. In fact, I remember I used to play a fairly small mobile game called Warlight. It was based on the board game Risk, and it enabled me to meet literally hundreds of other people from all across the world. We'd sit and play these games on our mobile phone. We made a clan, we were creative. I felt like I was part of a community, and I've stopped playing that game. I haven't played for years, but to this day I still chat to some people from the community. We even had a little D&D group for a while. I mean, you may well have heard stories of people meeting their partner on RuneScape and then marrying up on the game. You may hear stories of people meeting up remotely and hanging out with one another on the weekend playing FIFA, or just playing single player games whilst being on Discord and chatting to their friends. Video games really do provide an accessible means to speak with others, and even the interaction with NPCs within a game's world can provide a bit of a stroke to our social needs. It can feel like we're socialising. So this might be a legitimate reason you play games. You play them to socialise. You play them because you can connect with people when you do it. Secondly, within that, social skills. You know, social anxiety disorder, or social phobia, it's really common. NICE reports that it's actually the third most common mental health condition, and it affects about 12% of the UK. So, social anxiety, it's a fear around performing socially, or maybe a fear of being rejected, embarrassed, or out of control as you try and navigate social interactions. And this, like any phobia, can be really quite debilitating and prevent you from meeting any other people. Or if you do, it can create this huge panic and discomfort. Your mind might be spinning. You might even start to experience sensations of panic attack and certainly not feel relaxed enough to chill and socialize. All of this together can add to a sense of isolation or loneliness and block people from the social gatherings or meetups that might actually even ease that loneliness. Enter video games. Gaming gives you control over social interaction. When you speak with strangers, you can leave that conversation. You can disconnect if it starts to feel too intense in a way that's difficult if you're down the pub with someone and you just want to go. You've got a common interest you can speak about within the game, and that reduces the sense of performance. You just chat about Minecraft or Fortnite. You just hang out with the people you're with. There isn't also the same pressure to talk or fear around awkward silences because you're playing the game. It's for me, actually, board games, if we have people over, board games are great because you can talk and you can also not talk because you've got something to take your attention. And all of this together, all of these things, it removes a lot of those sensations that might be experienced within social anxiety and which can stop people from interacting because the panic is so great. And so it helps us to develop tolerance to social exposure. It improves our confidence even to socialize outside of a game. Heck, if I can log on and play some Call of Duty and chat to my mates, maybe I could go out with them and chat with them as well outside. It increases our tolerance. The same social exposure also provides practice at speaking to a variety of different people within a safe, familiar topic, and so it's developing our social skills. There are also some other games. Let's take Vampire the Masquerades, and that will help us to develop empathy for characters, providing an opportunity with experimenting, saying different things to them, which can affect the outcome of a game and how that NPC feels towards you. Are they cooperative? Are they threatening? Are they offended by you? You get chances to make mistakes and try out socializing. It doesn't feel uncomfortable. The autism training sometimes has social skills programs. It can feel like it's pulling teeth, like it's very different to actual social interactions with a real life person rather than a training program. Whereas in gaming or role playing, you're learning on the job. It's natural. It's organically building social skills. Next up, competition and failure. Competition can be against others, against established records, or even just against yourself. It may be that you're playing in a tournament of Super Smash Bros, competing against your friends just for kudos. You might be playing League of Legends for some real-world cash prizes as an esport. Maybe you're trying to beat the speed running record for Mario 64. Or just your personal best within a game you really like, developing that same sense of mastery. See, video games were once a hobby, but now competing, setting records, or being a gamer on platforms like Twitch or YouTube has led to some very real career opportunities and income sources. Furthermore, MOBA games have leagues and medals in and of themselves that highlight your skill. And most games these days on Steam will have unlockable achievements and certain milestones that flash up on your profile for other people to be able to see if you've platinumed something. And all of that can nurture the need not just to develop level and game mastery, but to be good enough to compete in a game, to find a niche in it, to have the game that you are best at. Furthermore, the competition within video games is accessible, giving many opportunities to play against others or against yourself, and something that you can develop at your pace versus, say, if you wanted to be an Olympian or a pro football player, where you start to reach someone about my age and your ability declines. It's accessible video gaming. I will never forget the rush actually when I was a teenager in old school RuneScape and stepping out into the wilderness. Wilderness was the PvP area, and gambling all of my gear by fighting other players, hoping against the odds that I would defeat them and win what they're holding. It was gaming, but it was a bit like the rush of gambling. Video games also create a way we can fail, like I did in the wilderness when I died and someone else took my stuff. But you see, failure is part of life. Whenever we are trying to learn something new as a beginner, we're not going to be perfect at it. We will make wrong or suboptimal choices and we'll have setbacks. For people who have got a more critical inner dialogue or who may be experiencing a sense of perfectionism, the reality of everyday failures can be intense or overwhelming, feeling personal as though it's not they failed at a thing, but as though they themselves are wrong, they themselves are a failure. And this can block people from trying new things because of that embarrassment at wondering if we're good enough. Neurodiverse people will often feel a sense of failure as they try to blend into a world built for neurotypicals with foreign social structures, an intensity of sensory information, and less of a valuing of routine that can make further failures difficult, make us feel like we don't fit in. Now, video games, they're a way to fail. We all start as a noob, and we recognise that it's normal to be a noob when we first begin a game, to make mistakes, to die, to fail, but realise that the game doesn't end after a failure. We get to still play. We get to see failure not as failure, we reframe it into challenge, to transcribe that into other areas of our life where we can try new things rather than holding on to this phobia of what if I make a mistake. In my video I made on procrastination, I talk about procrastinating on making my very first YouTube video because I really felt like it has to be perfect and I was acutely aware that it was not going to be. I actually rewatched the unedited video recently. I've added some music to it and I sort of cringe at how it was. But of course it wasn't perfect. It was my first video and we all need to begin somewhere. And I think actually maybe that's what some of us need to take from this. We need to embrace our inner noob. Fearing getting it wrong, it can paralyze us. And video games, they give us a safety to normalize getting it wrong. And that not stopping us from trying if we do. So maybe that's why you play video games. It enables you to compete and be competitive and to tolerate failure within the safety of a game. For our next needs, let's look at fun, stimulation, and depression. Video games are stimulating, they're fun, they're entertaining. The bright colours in Beautiful Joe, the pressure of Elden Ring where you can't pause it and enemies abound, the beautiful soundtracks of Final Fantasy, that addictive desire for just one more game in Rocket League, or the joy of swinging through New York if you're playing Spider-Man. The levels of vibrancy, stimulation, transportation into a game, they're fun and they're accessible quickly within video games without that same level of responsibility, cost or effort we might face in real life. And this is especially the case with depression. See, there's a symptom of depression called anhedonia. And anhedonia is the loss of interest in activity and an inability to derive joy from the everyday. Another symptom of depression is brain fog and a lowering of self-esteem that can make concentrating, appreciating ourselves, and making decisions difficult for a person experiencing depression. But video games, they can support depression by providing a moment of concentration that engages us. It makes decision making easy when you're playing as the protagonist, and a sense of appreciation as you overcome each milestone. Gaming can provide a sense of joy, maybe nostalgically, rooting back to play in childhood. There was a study by Cowell that found that gaming in moderation can decrease the intensity of the symptoms of both anxiety and depression. And both of these conditions are conditions that are most prevalent in younger people who are more likely to game and use gaming to regulate those mood symptoms. Gaming isn't the cure for anhedonia, but it can provide a relief to the intensity of it, and snippets of joy that are difficult to accomplish outside. A meta-analysis of 12 different papers by Ruiz looked at video games and depression. It looked at a game, Wii Sports, and found that Wii Sports can reduce depressive symptoms, and it increases the health-related quality of life. And this was thought to be because of the increase in physical activity around the game. And there are other games that get us fit and active. Games like Dance Dance Revolution or Pokemon Go. It's made fitness fun, and this can be protective against depression. Similarly, fitness apps will use gamification techniques, such as getting medals or your personal best on Strava, and it makes exercise into a game, it makes it fun. Ruiz's study likewise found other games can help to keep our attention focused, which can be difficult with that sense of brain fog, decision making and concentration. Games like Boson X or Plants vs Zombies, stimulating games, these are mobile ones, they can reduce depressive symptoms and they can reduce the rumination, the thinking that can happen in depression. So maybe that's why you play video games. It's a way for you to survive. You need stimulation and fun in contrast to life. You need it to feel joy, to feel progress and presence during the numbness you experience within depression. Games can be a way for you to leave rumination, relieve the intensity of the mind. And maybe you're playing games as a way of excessively exercising, and that in itself can be protective against depression. Maybe you're playing video games as a way of regulating your mood. You see, something that fascinates me is the way that we use media to express, process, and regulate our mood or our experience. We feel scared and we might choose to watch a horror film to enhance and symbolize that feeling. Or maybe we watch a comedy to avoid that fear and cheer ourselves up. We feel sad. We might listen to a sad song, a real breakup tune to help those tears to flow and feel what's there. We exercise and we might have a playlist in the background to excite and pace us. Or maybe there's a podcast in the background as we do an activity like cooking, stirring away at the spag bowl to keep the mind occupied. And the same is true for gaming. Hazel's study of the psychology and emotions involved in gaming looked at 2,107 adult gamers, and it found that 88.4% of people experienced positive emotional benefits from gaming, especially if these were music games, RPGs, or survival horrors. So maybe life's a struggle for you, and you might enhance that sense of struggle to better feel and symbolize it by playing a survival horror game like Alien Isolation. Maybe instead life's still a struggle, but you escape that struggle with a game that's more relaxing, maybe some Animal Crossing. Perhaps you're grieving, and a game like Final Fantasy IX, it helps with finding existential meaning and purpose on life. Or a game like Gris, in experiencing the different stages of grief. Maybe you're angry and you want to express it violently in Grand Theft Auto. Or maybe you're angry and you want to calmly leave the worries of the world in a game like No Man's Sky. Like any media, the games that we're playing at different seasons of our lives and at different moods at different times, it speaks to us. It helps us to enhance those moods, those seasons, or it helps us to avoid them. We're regulating our feeling, we're regulating our mood, we're regulating different seasons of our lives in the games that we choose to play. So this is another one of the why we play video games, and it might be helpful to ask ourselves a question. What did I feel like before I started playing today? What do I feel like when I'm playing? Has the game done something to my mood? Has it elevated? Has it changed it? Has it decreased it? What's it doing for my mood? Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why you're playing games, to feel better, to enhance a feeling that's already there and you're struggling to express, or just to feel something different or something at all. You might be playing video games to regulate your emotions. Our next point is empathy for others, and I'm going to talk a bit about psychosis within this. Games don't just expose us to a character's experience, they allow us to take control of that character and the people around them. In becoming the character, we empathise with them in a way that we couldn't if we were just in a film or reading, where you have less control of the narrative. Whereas in a game you can project onto the person. And this allows a deep empathy and a scope to empathise with people groups that may be harder to empathise with outside of gaming. Psychosis is particularly stigmatised amongst mental health symptoms, and sufferers can interject this stigma as them being somehow wrong, and this can block their engagement with support and isolate them socially. Furthermore, the experience of psychosis, hallucinations, or delusions can be difficult to empathise with for people who haven't experienced it. There was a study in 2020 by Fairchild et al. That got 198 people to play a video game called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which features a main character, Senua, who has an accurate, empathic portrayal of psychosis, and this is an ever-present obstacle that she must navigate alongside her main quest, as voices keep speaking to her across the room, which plays out in your headset as you play her. So this study got people to either watch or to themselves play Hellblade for 45 minutes. And what they found was that people who played the game were more likely to experience transportation, which is a term used for an intense immersion in the game. So they're more likely to experience transportation, and they're more likely to experience identification. And identification is a term where you physically take on the persona of Senua, including her psychosis. So this resulted in significantly deeper empathy than just watching the game if you played it. And though the participants in the study's stereotyping didn't necessarily shift, there was a significant reduction in social distancing. And when I say social distancing, what I mean is that the participants would be less afraid or averse to getting to know somebody who had psychosis. It increased their connection with the sufferer, which in turn increase their openness to getting to know others experiencing hallucinations. So maybe this is a value you're gaining from video gaming, and maybe less of the purpose, but it's a value you get from it. It's increasing your worldview, it's increasing your empathy by empathizing with people who are different to you. And in playing different games that don't necessarily match your preferences, you're doing just that. You're building empathy for understanding what it might be like for being somebody else. Another why of why you play video games could be to help with decisions. The Latin root of decide is decidere, which means to cut off. And that's kind of what we do when we decide. We amputate, we kill the alternate options. Decisions, they always have an opportunity cost, and we need confidence in making them because decisions are rarely black and white, with there often being merit for both sides of a decision. Lacking confidence and certainty, it can make decisions difficult and result in procrastination, where our inaction saves us from the pain of cutting off alternate choices and sticking ourselves down a path that we might regret. The existential weight of pressure to make decisions and move in a direction, alongside the reality that all the choices are flawed, can be overwhelming and even paralysing. Furthermore, we live in an age where there are an unfathomable number of options, and these plethora of choices can in and of itself be paralysing. I mean, career. No longer do we just inherit the family business like we used to do with surnames, John Smith for blacksmith. So that's the pain of decisions, why the cutting off option is difficult in reality. In games, decisions are also important. Which build do we go for? How do we navigate this obstacle? Which clan do I join? What difficulty do I want to play on? But there's a couple of factors. Number one, the pressure's lower. We're cutting off alternate paths when we join the Stormcloaks over the Imperials in Skyrim, but we can always play the game again to see what a different path might look like. The choices are much less open, our second point. We have an illusion of being in an open world, but the playstyles and choices are much less overwhelming than the career options in Western society, due to the manageable limit of options. 3. Time pressures and deadlines can be moving factors in making decisions, which can feel abstract in reality. For example, when are we officially men? Is it 14, 18, when we get our first job, when we buy our first house, if we're a dad? We don't really know. But in games we have a time limit, or random encounters that push us into making decisions at a pace that feels natural, and once we've made them, we might get an accomplishment or something that jumps up in our stat block to say that this decision has been made. We are a man. 4. Games are a closed system. We can research options and read guides to come to decisions in a way that is optimized and unlikely to change, at least until the latest patch. And then finally, Carol said that, just like play therapy, the avatars we play as allow us to be exposed to new situations which can challenge schemas and open us up to new ideas outside of our limitations. In other words, games enable us to be exposed to decisions we wouldn't normally encounter, which can both improve our confidence as a decision maker and our familiarity with new areas we may need to make decisions on in the future. So maybe that's why you're gaming, maybe that's the need it meets. Making decisions, confidently and developing your leadership abilities. My final why for this video is trauma. There was a study at the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford from 2017, and it found that if you play Tetris within the first few hours of a traumatic incident, in this case the study was looking at road traffic accidents, so if you play Tetris for 10 to 20 minutes, you are significantly less likely to be impacted by post-traumatic invasive memories, i.e. flashbacks. So if you've just been in an accident or a major traumatic incident, have a go at playing Dr. Robotnik's Mean Beat Machine, play some Tetris, and trust your mind to just process away in the background. You see, video games, they are a great way to let your mind wander. It keeps you engaged and the mind thinking in the background, but much of the worrying brain's distracted by trying to play the game. It allows the brain the chance to process bigger things, like traumatic information, within the safety and distance of a distraction that a simple video game provides. Slightly unrelated, when I see clients, when I counsel, I like to give myself some time before the session just to read through the notes, and it helps me to kind of refamiliarise myself with the person, to names to sink back in, that kind of thing. But I also, as well as just reading the factual information and bringing the clients to mind, I also want to be able to trust my felt sense, my body, my feelings, to connect to the person. So if we're working online, I quite often play Tetris before a session. I find it allows me to process and attune myself naturally without putting too much pressure or performance on the cognitive mind, which is the position I kind of want to get into to be attuned to a client. And likewise, if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed after a busy day, I find that playing an hour of video games can really help to disconnect from that overwhelm, but in a way that's controlled, and allow my feelings and my mind to bobble about and process all of the stuff that's going on without the pressure of actively engaging in thought around it. So the next time you experience something overwhelming, the next time you have a hard day or just want to switch off that thinking mind and give some space for that emotional mind to speak, have a go at Tetris. Trust your body to process in the background. And this may be another why of why you game. It allows you to process, particularly when things you are processing are overwhelming or even trauma information. Because if you were to actively process it, actively think about it and give it all of your attention, you could risk re-traumatizing yourself. Whereas if you're playing Tetris, you can just trust the body to process it at its pace. So that's the end of this second video. I hope in watching this that you've gained more control, more awareness, more intentionality, and more self-compassionate for your gaming. If you haven't already seen it, then do check out the first part exploring some other needs met in gaming. You can also read the script for both videos as an article on my website. There's a link down in the doobly-doo. And that article has all of the references for the different studies I cite on things like depression, anxiety, and trauma, along with a link, so you can just click on that link and read the studies directly if you'd like. Likes are always appreciated, and do please feel free to comment down in the description why you play video games, but bear in mind confidentiality and that comments are out in the public domain. I have really greatly enjoyed connecting with some of your comments in the last video, both on YouTube but also people who have commented on my Facebook, and it's been lovely to just hear your stories about what gaming does for you, or if you are working in the field as a therapist and if you're using video games or playing with your clients. I love hearing stories. feel free to contact me. You can contact me on my website at www.simonslistening.co.uk if you're based in the UK and you're looking for counselling. Many thanks again for listening, and catch you on the next video next time. I'm not currently working on a script for a new video. I don't know, maybe I should play some Tetris myself and trust that a subject will bubble up in my mind that I can research, get my teeth into, and then produce another video or two on. So actually also please do comment if there is a particular area you'd like a video on. But yes, again, thank you and have a really great day.